Hello, I have created an agent using the OpenAI Agents SDK framework, and this agent is called Researcher. So I'm going to run that agent using the runner.run method, pass in the agent I want to run, and then give it a message saying research the topic, in this case it's apples, and output 3 to 4 detailed bullet points about your findings. Okay, so let's run it and see what happens. Okay, so it looks like it is throwing an exception, and that is actually what I wanted it to do. So if you notice, and if you read this exception, it says input guardrail tripwire triggered. That basically means that we have a guardrail and that something that wasn't supposed to happen happened. So that's exactly what's supposed to happen if, and here's the condition, if the agent is asked about food. Okay, so that's kind of a silly example, but obviously you can probably see the application where it could trigger that if somebody's asking something inappropriate, or maybe it's just out of scope and you don't want to waste your tokens. So how did I trigger that tripwire? How did I configure the agent to trigger that guardrail tripwire when it was asked about food? Well, I'll show you in just a minute. But before that, and stay with me here, I'm going to show you one more thing that is related, and this is structured output. Let me show you an example of structured output. So I'm going to change the topic to be Atlantic Ocean, and I'm going to run that same agent, but this time it's going to search about Atlantic Ocean, and it will not trigger the guardrail tripwire because it is not asking about food. Let's print it real quick. What I want to show you here is it is giving a structured output. Okay, so you can see it's made up of key value pairs, right? So we have topic, and the value is Atlantic Ocean, and then we have a list of findings, and findings include a subtopic and then details about that subtopic. Let me give you a better idea of what that looks like if I loop through each of the findings here in this object. Okay, so there you go. So you can see we have 4 different subtopics: geography, ecosystem, climate influence, and historical significance. And then we have details for each of those subtopics. And no matter what I tell the agent to research about, it's going to format the output in this pattern. Okay, so that is structured output. And we've also shown guardrails. The two are very closely related. So now let's talk about exactly how we set that up. So I'm going to scroll back up and I'm going to start with some of the packages that we're using. So first of all, I do have links to documentation that is helpful to understand what we talk about today. One thing that we are going to talk about today is Pydantic, or we will at least be using it a lot today. So I do have some links to documentation for Pydantic. But we do want to install these packages, first of all, the OpenAI Agents SDK package, of course, that's what we are using. And then python.env will allow us to authenticate with the model provider. So in this case, it will be OpenAI. We will be using OpenAI models, okay? So from those packages, I've actually already ran that install to save time. We will import the different things. We have agent, we have runner to run the agents. We have this guardrail function output and this input guardrail class that come from our Agents SDK package. And then we have Pydantic and specifically base model, which is a class provided by Pydantic. I'll show you how we use that in just a minute. Okay, so I'm going to skim over this real quick, but we do need to load in our API keys from OpenAI so that we can use their model. We do this using load.env. I talk about this more in depth in other videos, so I'm just going to glaze over it now because that's not what this video is about. But just as a quick summary, you need to create an API key at platform.openai.com or DeepSeek or Google, whatever model provider you're using, and then add that API key using these keywords into your .env file. And I'm just using .env demo so that I don't share my actual API keys with you. Okay, if this is true, then everything is good. It was able to find the API key, so let's keep moving on. So first, I'm actually going to skip over guardrails, and I am going to show you structured outputs. Okay, so like I said, we use Pydantic, and Pydantic has a class called base model. And basically what that does is it enforces the structure. You can use it to enforce the structure of your output. Okay, so we need to create a class that can tell our agent how to structure the output. All right, so we create a class. In this instance, we're creating 2 classes, and I'll show you why. We can call it anything we want. We'll call it finding, and it needs to inherit from base model. Okay, and then that class has 2 attributes: a subtopic, which is a string, and details, which is a string. Okay, then we create one more class called research output, and then it inherits from base model. And all that is it has a topic, which is a string, and then it has another attribute called findings, which is a list of this finding class. So it's basically a list of subtopics and details, just like the output that I showed you. Okay, So run that. Now we've defined our classes. Okay. So let me show you how that works. So remember, research output, that's the name of our class. We want to create, now that we have that created, we're going to create our agent. And we give it a system prompt. You are a skilled and resourceful researcher. Your job is to deeply investigate any assigned topic. Now we actually create the agent. So we call it researcher, use the agent class, give it any name we want. We'll just call it professional researcher, pass in those system instructions, pass in the model we want to use, and then we give it, let's ignore the guardrails for now, actually. And we say output type. So this is what to focus on. Ignore guardrails. Research output. If I scroll back up, that is the name of this class up here, which is the topic and then the list of findings. Okay. So that is our output type. If you don't have an output type, it'll be free format, whatever the LLM decides it wants to do or whatever the prompt tells it to format it as. But this will enforce that structure that we defined with those classes. Okay. And then you already saw what the output looked like from me running this agent. And it was that topic, Atlantic Ocean, and findings with that list of subtopics and details. Okay, so that's what that looked like. So that is structured output. Okay, so now that we have structured outputs down, this is going to help us understand guardrails. Okay, so let me scroll back up and go to guardrails. And I like this part. This part's pretty cool. I enjoyed learning about this. So same as structured outputs, we are going to create a class that inherits from Pydantic's base model. This class has two attributes. Is food and message, it's a Boolean, true or false, and food, which is string. So then we create an agent called our guardrail agent. Nothing special about this agent yet, just a regular agent. Give it a name, give it instruction, check if the user is asking about food, okay? Give it a model, GPT-4o mini, and then just like we did with the last example I showed you, the output type equals the class that we created. So we expect that the output of this agent will be a Boolean and a string, okay? So let's create that. We've defined our agent, we've defined its output. And if we were to run it just as it is, okay, it's just a regular agent call, runner.run, tell me about apples is the prompt. So if we run that, we can see is food and message equals true and food equals apples. So it has the structure that we defined. So we've created an agent with a structured output, right? And we've seen that in action. Now we take that agent, this guardrail agent, and we put it inside of a function. And we decorate that function with this special decorator called input guardrail, okay? And then we define this function. The function is going to take arguments. It's going to take context. It's going to take agent, and it's going to take message. And it has to be, the signature of this method has to be like that. And then all that's happening in here is the agent gets ran, the message is passed in, the agent is passed in, the context, if any, is passed in, and we save a variable using the result is food and message. So basically using whatever this value is. So in this case, it would be true, okay? Then the important part is this tripwire triggered. If that value is true, it's going to throw that exception that we saw where the guardrail tripwire is triggered. If it is false, then it's just going to let the agent or the LLM do its work. No error is going to be thrown, okay? So basically, it's just using that agent to analyze if there's food anywhere in the message. Since it's a structured output, we know that there's going to be a key value pair with called is food in message, and it's going to be true or false to that value, save that value to that variable, and then pass that to this tripwire triggered argument, okay? So let me create that. So now we have a input guardrail created. And then as you can probably guess, and as I kind of sneak peeked earlier, now all we have to do is take this guardrail called guardrail food check and give it to our agent. We pass it in with the agent definition. So let's scroll down here. And here's our agent definition. We commented out in the last example because I wanted you to focus on the output type. But if I uncomment it now, you see for input guardrails, we are using the guardrail that we just created. And if you want more than one guardrail, you can pass them in here as a comma separated list, okay? So now we have that created again, and you saw what happened, but I'll show you it just one more time just for fun. If we type in apples, and then tell our agent to do some research about apples, we should get an error. And there you go. The input guardrail tripwire was indeed triggered. So as you can see, we were able to create that guardrail by creating an agent with a structured output and then taking advantage of that structured output to create a function that can be converted into a input guardrail. So I want to show you what those traces look like. And if we look at this one, this is not our most recent one, but the one right before it. I think this one should be the one that actually fails because of the guardrail. Okay, so we see that the professional researcher agent was invoked, and then for this turn, the guardrail was triggered, and we see this error. Okay, and then if I go back to the most recent one, that one's the one that we did about the Atlantic Ocean. You see the professional researcher was used, and if we go to guardrail, we see that triggered is false. It was not triggered. Okay, so it was able to succeed. And then of course we get our output, and there you have it, our topic with our list of findings as subtopics and details. Okay, so I hope that was helpful, and I hope that made sense how we can create structured outputs and guardrails with the OpenAI Agents SDK framework. I personally enjoyed learning about the guardrails and the structured outputs, so hopefully you enjoyed it too. If it was helpful, please like this video and subscribe to my channel for more content. Thank you.